The tampon king gets back in the ring. I speak of former VP nominee Tim Walz. He joined Beto O'Rourke at a Texas town hall last night, and the estrogen levels were enough to give Chuck Norris menstrual cramps. I wonder, is our strength our diversity?
Our strength is our diversity. We've been talking about this for years as a country of immigrants, and we let them define the issue on immigration. We let them define the issue on D&I.
But I'm thinking there's only one explanation for Tim spewing nonsense like this. Time of the month.
What happens when a prideful politician gets exposed on live television? You witness Tim Walz getting dragged like a soggy takeout box tossed out the back door. Tim completely lost his composure after Greg Gutfeld humiliated him in front of millions of viewers. Gutfeld didn't just offer criticism, he tore Walz apart like a wrecking ball crashing through a glass mansion. The moment was pure chaos as Gutfeld shredded Walz's leadership style, comparing it to a failed comedy act that turned into a full-blown disaster. He mocked Walz's bizarre approach, saying it looked like watching a man search for his Prius in a Target parking lot for 3 days straight. Every single punchline from Gutfeld was sharper than the last. He made it crystal clear. Walz wasn't leading, he was wandering aimlessly with a map drawn in crayon. The audience roared with laughter when Gutfeld labeled him a gluten-free piñata at a meat lover's cookout. What a burn! Every sentence was a knockout. Gutfeld didn't hold back as he accused Walz of transforming Minnesota into a full-blown circus, without a tent, a ringmaster, or a clue. He went all in, slamming Walz's decision-making as nothing more than bureaucratic interpretive dance, awkward, confusing, and absolutely pointless.
Tim Walz continues to be criticized for embellishing his rank in service. After it came out over the weekend, he once claimed to be an official bikini inspector. Walz's direct superior in the National Guard says Walz knew his unit was about to deploy to Iraq and went behind the back of his superior officer to resign. When reached for comment, Walz yelled, "Hey, look over there!" and then ran away. Although Walz's actions look bad to veterans, Dems say these revelations could really help him win the coward vote.
Gutfeld's roasting didn't slow down for a second. He compared the state's leadership to a botched art project no one wanted to see. Then, boom, came the fireworks. Gutfeld pulled up one of Walz's most embarrassing past claims, that he was once an official bikini inspector. What? The crowd gasped at the absurdity. Gutfeld burst into laughter, saying, "That's not even a good lie." But it only got worse. Gutfeld dropped the bomb about how Walz allegedly dodged military deployment just before heading to Iraq. According to reports, Walz resigned quietly and went around his commanding officer to avoid serving in a war zone. What a scandal! Gutfeld didn't hold back. He roared, "That's not leadership. That's strategic cowardice." One of Walz's superiors even claimed Walz disappeared like a ghost, right when his unit needed him the most. And when questioned about it, Walz reportedly shouted, "Hey, look over there," before fleeing like a cartoon villain. Unbelievable. Veterans weren't laughing. They slammed Walz, saying his choices might win over scared voters, but not real heroes. Gutfeld poured gasoline on the fire, claiming Walz's approval rating was colder than a Minnesota snowman in the dead of January. Then came another insult. Gutfeld called Walz lukewarm mashed potatoes at a buffet, the kind nobody remembers touching. Ouch! But Gutfeld wasn't done. He cranked up his sarcasm like a roaring chainsaw, shredding every shred of Walz's political image. With wild energy, Gutfeld mocked Walz's leadership, calling it a child's art project gone off the rails, chaotic, messy, and only praised out of pity. He hammered Walz's decisions, saying they felt like finger painting with expired mayonnaise, disgusting, pointless, and a total waste. And just when you thought it couldn't get worse, Gutfeld tore into Walz's weak attempt to defend himself with a brutal takedown.
Saw just recently Donald Trump's executive order to make it more difficult, specifically to women, trying to make it more difficult for women to be able to vote. We see one of the first things they do is try and restrict the vote.
Wait, so Trump is making it more difficult for women to vote? How so? Math problems? But it's further proof that the most dangerous thing for a leftist is a follow-up question, which is why you never hear any. But I guess questioning elections is okay now. But the best moment came when Walz forgot who he is.
Gutfeld couldn't stop laughing as he said Walz used his military background like a shield, not to lead, but to dodge accountability. Walz once tried to explain away a wild night by claiming he wasn't drunk, blaming the chaos on some confusing service-related mix-up. Gutfeld jumped on that instantly, yelling he didn't fail the drunk test, he just misheard the instructions. The crowd exploded with laughter. According to reports, Walz was caught driving over 100 miles per hour, with a blood alcohol level that raised eyebrows even among seasoned bartenders. But during his campaign, Walz swore he was totally sober. Gutfeld roasted him, saying he rewrote history faster than a reality show contestant scrambling to cover their tracks. With deadpan delivery, Gutfeld looked straight into the camera and declared, "This guy takes responsibility for nothing, not even his own breathalyzer." Then came the hotline scandal. Walz launched a snitch line for people to report others, yet swept his own offenses under the rug like they never even happened. "He wants you to snitch," Gutfeld roared, "but won't admit when he screws up himself." The crowd was howling. Gutfeld shouted, "You can't spell hypocrisy without Walz." The studio went wild. Then, another jab. Gutfeld reminded everyone, this is the same guy who spread creepy couch stories. Then acts shocked when people call him creepy, too. "Let's be honest," Gutfeld said with a smirk. "Walz gives off major energy of a guy who writes diary entries about scented candles and political power." He didn't stop there. Gutfeld joked that Walz is the kind of guy who gets confused by a simple handshake. Awkward, stiff, and slow like cardboard. Watching Walz run Minnesota, Gutfeld said, is like watching a substitute teacher try to control a room full of caffeinated raccoons. Absolute chaos. He talks like someone who skimmed a leadership book once and now thinks he's a 4-star general, Gutfeld snapped, slicing deep. And then, the ultimate roast. Gutfeld painted a wild picture of Walz, showing up with a whiteboard that says feelings and a kazoo, stumbling into debates like it's his first day on the job. "He begged to be roasted," Gutfeld exclaimed. "He walked into this with glitter glue and a ribbon that says, 'I tried.'"
Walz is a strange dude.
Oh, he's strange.
He is strange. Him and I are the same age. How does he look so much younger?
No, he's a strange guy.
Strange.
You know, he called up years ago. I was in the White House, and he said, "My house is being surrounded by people with American flags." I said, "Is that a good thing or a bad thing?" He said, "I think they're going to attack me." This was during the riots and everything else. They were MAGA people. You know, they like the American flag, all right? And they also had Trump. And I said, "How do you know?" There were about 15,000, he said. He said, "Could you put out a word like that I'm your friend?" I don't even know him, but that's the only time I ever spoke to him. And if you look back long ago, tweets, before truth, tweets, long ago, I put out a statement, "He's a good man, the governor. He's on our side." I didn't know him, but I didn't want him to get hurt. And everybody put down their flags and they left. Yes. He said it was a miracle. He said it was a miracle.
Gutfeld then turned his spotlight on Walz's pandemic response, branding it a real-life audition to become the supreme shutdown master. He slammed Walz for closing churches and slapping bar owners with fines, while calling street protests essential. What kind of twisted logic is that? Gutfeld couldn't resist. "You shut down bingo night," he said, but left the streets wide open for anyone waving a puppet with a slogan. He declared Walz's health strategy wasn't science. It was interpretive theater dressed up in a government badge. What a brutal blow. But Gutfeld wasn't finished. He moved straight to Walz's wide-eyed, jittery debate performance, calling it emotional intensity that screamed panic, not passion. One commentator tried to say Walz's eyes showed concern, but Gutfeld wasn't buying it. He rolled the footage and asked, "Does this look like a man ready to lead? Or someone desperately trying to remember his Wi-Fi password?" He even zoomed in on Walz's frozen expression, shouting, even deer in headlights were yelling at him to get out of the way. The roast rolled on. Gutfeld compared giving Walz a state surplus to handing a toddler a credit card and telling him to only buy essentials. "Suddenly the budget's gone," Gutfeld mocked, "and all we've got are glitter pens and interpretive murals." Ouch! Minnesota's tax money, he said, vanished into bizarre programs, overpriced retreats, and weird government paintings, like one of Walz just staring at clouds. "Red tape isn't just back," Gutfeld said. "It's an Olympic sport now in Minnesota, and Walz is sprinting for gold." He joked that even kids running lemonade stands needed 14 permits and a personal identity statement just to sell a drink on the sidewalk. Then came the knockout. Gutfeld said Walz once called Donald Trump a wannabe dictator, and he nearly choked on the irony. "This," Gutfeld exclaimed, "from the guy who shut down Sunday potlucks, but gave mass street protests a green light with zero restrictions." He asked why, during the pandemic, Walz punished business owners just for opening their doors, while cheering for giant crowds holding signs. Gutfeld's voice oozed sarcasm as he called the whole thing political virus control. Scathing.
Exploited his military background to cover up his crime. He said it was related to his service and that he actually wasn't drunk. He just misheard the instructions in the drunk test. He blew a super high level. It was like, .2, driving 100 miles an hour. And then when he's running for office, he said that he wasn't drunk. I mean, this guy has creep written all over it. He created a snitch line, but lies about his personal infractions. He doesn't even own up to it. This is a guy who pushes a hoax about a sex on a couch, and then the closer you look at him, he's a creepy cuck.
Meanwhile, Kamala's VP, Tim Walz, is being accused of lying about his rank, which is called stolen valor. But in Walz's defense in Minneapolis, stealing is legal. But misrepresenting your past for political gain? I don't see that as a problem, said one woman.
In Walz's world, your safety depends on how your party feels about you, not actual protection. What kind of leadership is that? Then the footage cut to Walz delivering a dramatic speech, accusing Trump of being weak and cruel. But Gutfeld wasn't having it. He shot back, projecting much? Even Trump got in on the action, recalling how Walz once claimed he was scared just because people with American flags were outside his house. What a stretch. Trump added, "He told me to release a statement saying I was his friend, but I didn't even know the guy." That confession hit hard. Gutfeld smirked and tossed in another jab. Real courage is calling for backup from a stranger because people are waving flags. The crowd howled. Then the mockery took off like wildfire. Gutfeld roasted Walz for obsessing over Gavin Newsom, saying he chased him like a fanboy chasing a terrible idea across state lines. He asked the crowd, does Walz really look at California's disasters and think, yes, let's copy that, but make it colder and throw in more potholes? Gutfeld painted Walz as the love child of Bernie Sanders and a broken stoplight, loud, confused, and stuck on red. What a slam! The crowd burst out laughing as Gutfeld leaned in and whispered, "He's not leading, he's acting," with a TED Talk voice and IKEA instructions. Every time Walz tried to explain something, Gutfeld rolled a clip that only made him look worse, exposing the massive gap between what Walz says and what's actually happening. Then Gutfeld pulled out a massive map of Minnesota, circled the Twin Cities in red, and labeled it, "Here be carjackings." The room went wild. He compared Walz's public safety plan to a mall security guard trying to stop a riot with a kazoo and a clipboard. Absolutely useless. Criminals aren't scared of his policies, Gutfeld said. They're just confused, and then they walk away laughing. Brutal. Crime stats flashed across the screen like sirens. Robberies up, assaults rising, and police stretched thin. It was a full-blown crisis. If Walz handled national security, Gutfeld joked, we'd all be learning Russian by next week. The punch landed hard. When the topic switched to education, Gutfeld didn't hold back. He called it performance art wrapped in buzzwords and glitter glue. What a mess! He mocked Minnesota's curriculum, saying, the only test students pass now is how fast they get offended. Devastating.
I'm especially talking about these old white guys who seem to disappoint us on a regular basis in this country.
Dude. You're an old white guy. And you're right, you are a huge disappointment. I guess hating himself is the first thing he's nailed correctly. Because Walz saying old white men suck isn't a political stance, it's his confession. Walz calling people old and white is like Maxine Waters making fun of someone for shopping at Wigs R Us. He wants to execute more DEI policies, and Trump wants to execute murderous gang members. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Can you see the difference?
Then came a clip of Walz criticizing older white men in leadership. And Gutfeld hit pause with perfect timing. He stared straight into the camera and said, "Dude, you're an old white guy." The audience erupted with laughter. Gutfeld chuckled and added, "This might be the first time Walz has ever told the truth. He's finally criticizing himself." He compared the moment to Maxine Waters calling out someone for shopping at the same wig store she uses. Hilariously hypocritical. Shaking his head, Gutfeld scoffed, "This isn't politics, it's projection with a podium." What a blow. As the heat built up, Gutfeld went after Walz's obsession with DEI, contrasting it with Trump's focus on locking up violent criminals. Tim wants more bureaucrats with PowerPoints, Gutfeld snapped. Trump wants more cops with handcuffs, the audience roared. Then Gutfeld dug deep into Walz's pandemic orders again, blasting him for shutting down small, family-run bars while praising massive protests as spiritually necessary. Apparently, Gutfeld said, the virus could tell the difference between church hymns and angry chanting. The sarcasm was biting. He played clips of Walz defending his selective lockdowns, then immediately cut to boarded-up businesses and silent, empty schools. It was never about safety, Gutfeld declared. It was about power and who got to keep it. The crowd gasped. He even mocked a Politico piece that claimed Walz's wide eyes showed passion and intensity. Gutfeld froze the video and asked, "What emotion is that?" He zoomed in and deadpanned. He looks like he just saw the bill for his own policies. The crowd exploded in laughter. Gutfeld leaned in and whispered, "This is the face of a man who bought glitter instead of groceries." Savage. His delivery was ruthless. Every clip was a dagger. Every joke, another spark in the fire. Gutfeld kept swinging, turning what was supposed to be a policy debate into a full-blown roast session. Giving Walz control over Minnesota's budget, he said, is like handing your wallet to a raccoon and expecting it to come back with dinner. Every dollar disappeared, Gutfeld said, into vague programs, diversity retreats, and slogans dressed up like serious ideas. The audience couldn't stop laughing when he added, "Where's the money going?" Probably into another mural of Walz, looking intense under moody lighting.
So the tone of the media was one of sadness, not reporting Walz's loss, but mourning it. Now, the truth is that a VP debate is like a colonoscopy. It's important and necessary, but that doesn't mean you want to watch it.
Hong Kong and China during the democracy protests went in. And from that, I learned a lot of what needed to be in governance.
Even a deer in the headlights is screaming, "Get the out of the way, dude!" It's no wonder they don't do follow-up questions with Democrats. They're like the top layer of day-old skimpy bean dip. What's underneath, you don't want to see.
Walz pitched his train project as a sleek, modern solution, but Gutfeld tore it down, calling it Elon Musk fan fiction on rusty tracks. As the camera zoomed in, Gutfeld laid it out plain and sharp. Why throw money at a train to nowhere when you can't even fix a pothole? Then the mood shifted, eerie and tense. Gutfeld pointed out that while Walz preached about equity, Crime rates kept climbing and businesses kept vanishing. What's the point of a community, Gutfeld asked, if no one feels safe enough to step outside after dark? Chilling? The screen flashed shocking stats, rising taxes, rows of empty storefronts, and families fleeing to South Dakota just to breathe easier. Gutfeld's tone dropped, serious and steady. "This isn't progress," he said. "It's a managed collapse," wearing a friendly smile. Devastating. Then came the subject no one wanted to touch: stolen valor. The room froze as Gutfeld addressed it head-on. Walz allegedly exaggerated his military rank, and now voters were demanding answers. The silence was deafening. "You can't fake honor," Gutfeld said. "You can't Photoshop courage." The room trembled with tension. "People know when someone's lied about the uniform," he added. "In Minnesota, you might get away with shoplifting, but stealing trust, that's still unforgivable." The crowd burst into applause as Gutfeld delivered the final blow, comparing Walz to a magic 8-ball in orthopedic shoes. "Shake him," he said, "and all you get is a confusing answer about bike lanes, equity, and gardening." What a wild image. No clarity, no solutions, just noise, wrapped in big government buzzwords and slogans. The crowd roared. As the camera pulled back, the message couldn't be clearer. Greg Gutfeld didn't just criticize Tim Walz. He shredded every excuse, every hollow promise, every awkward deflection, all carved apart with surgical sarcasm. This wasn't a political debate. It was a demolition. And Walz never saw it coming.